Okay, fourth time's the charm. It's been a little crazy with the kids being noisy and freaking out, but so today I want to take a look at an aspect of GURPS 4th edition, GURPS being the Generic Universal Role-Playing System by Steve Jackson Games. Steve Jackson Games is under the process of revising their the core basic set books, but they're not really looking at revising the rules or the mechanics, but that's something that I kind of want to look at a little bit today. Just from a numbers perspective, or at least to try to better understand it. And the thing that I want to try to understand today is size and range. And GURPS has kind of an interesting way of addressing these and how they scale different aspects of the game. So in short, size, each creature, its overall size can be represented with a size modifier, which affects how easy it is to hit with an attack. Really large creatures are easy to hit, really small creatures are hard to hit. That's the basic premise there. A human-sized creature is size modifier 0. It goes negative if you're smaller, positive if you're bigger. And that ties into range a little bit because if I go ahead and pull out the GURPS basic set and I look at the size and range tables. Actually, this is the character set. That table is in the campaign book, which I didn't grab. You end up with a spread that's something like this. And today I just want to focus on the larger end of the spectrum. And one thing that I really appreciate is that the size, let's call this just the length. Okay, so the distance, we call this a length or distance. Actually ties into the size modifier in terms of range penalty really well. So if I give the size modifier here and let's call this just R for the range. Okay, I'll just write it out, range penalty. Let's just focus on the positive size modifier. So starting with size modifier 0, human sized, the length for that is 2 yards. And the penalty for that is 0. Okay, 3 yards, size modifier +1, range penalty is -1. And then we go up to 5 yards length. So a creature that's 15 feet tall, size modifier +2, -2. So the size modifier and the range penalty are a match with each other. And I want to carry this through all the way through a full cycle of this. 10, 15, 20, 30, 50, 70, 100. So +3, +4, +5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we have a -3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So already we have size modifier and range penalty actually mirror each other perfectly, which I love it. It means there's only really one number to keep track of here when we're dealing with size and range. So a creature that's 100 yards tall but is 100 yards away, you have a +0 to hit, assuming you have a weapon that can hit that far. Next, let's look at another type of distance that we have in here, which is the long distance penalty. Okay, the long distance penalty, and that is found in the magic book for certain spells that can be cast over very long ranges. A lot of information spells use the long distance penalty. Okay, so this one uses a bit of different scaling. This one doesn't really pick up until we reach 200 yards. Okay, so I'm just going to continue the same pattern along because it's the same pattern. So this distance scale follows this sort of 1, 1.5, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10. So this right here, okay, is one cycle. Then we do 100, 150, 200, 300, 500, 700, and then 1,000, okay, yards. And there's that right there is a whole nother cycle. So it's this repetitive cycle. So you can see here that every 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, every 10 times, you're going to end up with plus 6 size modifier, sorry, and another -6 in your range penalty. Okay, so that's the pattern up here for this is times 10 is really easy to -6 because it follows this 1, 1.5, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 pattern. So the long distance penalty picks up at 200 yards, which is that's where you have a 0, is what your penalty is here. And it goes -1 so from 200 yards to a half mile is -1. So how long is a half mile? Well, a half mile is 880 yards. So if I insert 880 in here, okay, that's a half mile with -1 penalty. And everything is going to be -1 up to that point. So all this is +0 before here, okay? And when we get to 1,000, that's in the next range category, so that becomes -2. So it goes from a half mile to a full mile, which is the full mile, which is 1,760 yards, which is going to be our -3 point. And then the next step up is going to be 3 miles, and then 10 miles, and then 30 miles. So it kind of changes pattern here a little bit, but but you can see it just doesn't follow the same 2, 3, 5, 7 pattern. Because from here, we're going to go up to, I said after 1 mile, it's 3 miles, then 10 miles, then 30 miles, then 100 miles, 300, 1,000 miles. Okay, so there is your long distance penalty. And then let's look at your teleportation penalty. And in this one, I'm going to include the teleport spell from GURPS Magic, as well as the warp advantage from the basic set, because they both use basically the same scaling, and they both start at 10 yards. Okay, so 10 yards is anything up to 10 yards is 0. And then everything up to 20 yards is -1. And then everything up to 100 yards down here is -2. And then everything up to 500 yards is -3. So let's go to 500. This is -3. And then after that, it starts scaling a little bit funny, because then it goes up to 2 miles. All right, so now we have this 2-mile mark, okay, which is the 35-20 yards. So at the 2-mile mark, I feel like maybe I should do this to indicate that's added in between. So at the 2-mile mark, that's when this goes up to -4. And this is all -4 at all of these distances. And this is where teleport even gets a little inconsistent in it, and this is one thing I think could be straightened up a little bit. So in the warp advantage, this is just up to 2 miles. For the teleport spell, it goes up to 1.99 miles is -4, and then 2 miles enters the -5 penalty territory. But here I'm just going to call it 2 miles because I really think it should just stick to the stick to that pattern that it's already established. Okay, and then after that it goes by tens. So by 10 miles it's -5. We're going to skip 30. By 100 miles it's -6, and then 1,000 miles is -7. Okay, so we have 3 different scalings here. So this one I said is this 1, 1.5, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 pattern. Oh, can't even see that because it's off. Which means that for each times 10, that's -6 per times 10 is what this ends up. So if I go 10 times in my length column, this becomes an additional -6. In the long distance penalty column, because it follows this 10, 3, 10, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3 pattern. All right, so this is 1, 3, all right, 1, 3, 10, 30 pattern. This becomes add -2 per times 10. And over here for teleport, it becomes an add -1 pattern, but not off the bat. At first, it starts off with kind of a weird pattern because it's 1. This is a 1, 2, 10. All right, 1, 2, 10, 50, and then 2 miles, which is 3, 5, 20, which doesn't fit this pattern at all. That's like this. Well, I'm counting that. That's like saying this is like 352. All right, so 10, 20, 100, 500, 3,520. And then after that, it goes up to 10 miles. Okay, so this is a sort of 2, and then it goes up to 10, and then it goes up by hundreds. So this one, the teleporting, follows a really weird scale progression compared to the others. It's not linear, it's not really logarithmic till you hit the tens. It's just, here we're going to jump from 500 to 3,500, up to 5 times that, up to, and then we're just going to scale by 10. So this one's a really weird pattern. Let's separate this out a little bit. So add -1. Okay. So there's some interesting things going on here. You could equate these by saying, with a fairly simple equations back to this distance, where you just use your range penalty. For this one, you would just say your range penalty, since it starts at +12, you'd say the range penalty +12, then divide by, and then divide by 3, I think is what it kind of comes out to be. So that your -6 becomes a -2. And then here you do the same thing, but it's your range, range penalty where you even out is at 4. So you just say your range +4 divided by 6, since the penalty grows at 1/6 the rate. Part of me for teleport, because it comes in so much earlier than the long distance penalty, part of me wanted to call this the medium distance penalty. If I wanted to generalize it, right? Because GURPS is a generic universal role-playing system, can we make it more generic, more generalizable? But this isn't even the medium, because you very quickly start outpacing the long distance penalty. All right, this goes up by -2 each times 10 because it goes up by this 1, 3, 1, 3 pattern, and this just goes up by -1 every 10 because it goes by 10, 20, 1,000, right? It goes up by tens every time. So with the next multiple of 10, well, actually, by this point right here, this is the break-even point at 100 miles. And then teleport just becomes more efficient after that than the long distance penalty. Which I don't know. I feel a little weird about that. Especially with teleport's really weird scaling. So I would probably adjust this so that we just use this 1-3-1-3 pattern from the long distance. We pull it back to here, and then one thing we could do is if we really do want teleport to be -1 per, we just say divide the range penalty, your long distance range penalty, by 2. Here's your teleport modifier. And for spells that we really wanted to give you no penalty all the way up to 200 yards, you would just say it's the long range penalty plus whatever this distance is here. So if we follow this 1-3 pattern, so 10 yards then would be what the minus, that'd be the break-even point, right? If we went by that pattern, this would be the break-even point at 10. 30 would be -1. 100 would be -2. 300 would be -3. So 300 would be -3. So the 200 would be within that 300 range. So you just say it's that, and then just add +3 to your skill. At the same time, it's only 3 to your skill. Maybe that's an acceptable skill penalty for most of these informational spells. So you just accept this long distance. So you just accept this adjusted long distance penalty, and then teleport just divides that modifier by 2. What does that do to teleport? So that makes this +0. At 30, it makes it -1. At 100, it makes it -3. At 300, -4. So again, we're having it, so this would be -2 up to this point. Not too different from the teleport penalty already. And then at 1,000, -4, -5. So it would be in the -3 overall penalty if we adjusted it there. So this is my proposal for the new long distance penalty. Okay. So the +10 is our +0. And then we go up by 3s. -1 at 30, -2 at 100. Oh, I said plus. Ooh, -3, -4, -5, -6, -7. And look, we're already caught up with teleport and basically caught up with this other long distance penalty. So at longer distances, the penalty is smaller, but the penalty starts earlier. And this does change those numbers just a little bit, but really not that much. -3 is not gonna completely destroy your spell, especially when you're doing something that's kind of hard to divine. Anyway, use a ritual or friends or something to help you overcome that penalty, or you just say information spells add +3 to your roll. There you go. And then again, teleport, if you really wanted this -1 per multiplication of 10, you just take this penalty and you divide it by 2. Given how this is scaling up so far, up to 1,000 miles, I'm not convinced you need that. You could probably just keep this exactly as is, and you have more or less a teleport penalty that you already have, using not 10s, but the 1-3-1-3 pattern that was already established in the long distance penalty. So you end up building this up at -2 at 1/3 of the rate as your regular range penalty. So that's what I'd recommend with the new long distance penalties. Okay, so that's the kind of the first part of when I'm thinking about speed and range. The other component to size and range is scaling up damage with larger weapons, the cost and weight of armor, and in the low-tech books, there's actually 2 treatments of that. And I'm not going to get into that in this video. I'll get into that into the next video, but I think there's some opportunity here to address size and range with that. Okay. Well, I sure appreciate you being here for me for this part of my creative journey. I hope yours is going well. Please tell me how it's going in the comments. Give the video a like and subscribe if you'd like to encourage me to keep doing this and you'd like to continue following that journey. And until then, have a lovely day, and we'll see you next time. Bye.